right, so this is going to be the Sniffly podcast.
Yes.
It's winter and there are bugs. There are bugs crawling in my skin, man. Aren't there?
I actually had a fly up my jumper last night, hanging around in my armpit.
God. Did it tickle?
Yeah, I was like, where's that coming
I
from?
bet it tickled.
And I couldn't work it out for ages, and then finally I felt it tickle my armpit, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Alrighty, so here we go again. Let's rock and roll. What are we doing?
Let's do it.
Fill me in. I'm empty. I have no idea what's happening.
Okay, well, today we are talking about stress because it's a topic that's kind of come up within the community over the last couple of days, something we've been talking about, how to reduce stress, how to focus your life more towards relaxation, and essentially the lifestyle that we're cultivating is basically aimed away from stress and towards relaxation. So potentially, could we start off explaining a little bit about the lifestyle cultivation side of things? You know, we're not just sitting here meditating all the time. We live in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, the lifestyle
Speak
cultivation.
Okay, so what's the question? Where do you want to start on this subject?
On this subject? Well, what is the lifestyle that we are cultivating?
So we've all come to recognize something in our life, something which is commonly termed suffering, essentially. At some point we have acknowledged that maybe we're confused about what the hell is going on here. What are we doing? What are we? Why do we exist? So we have a kind of confusion in our life, and maybe that's that. Maybe it's just a simple case of you're confused and you just leave it at that, and you don't know, and you're never going to know, and you never want to know, and you're not going to inquire, and you just leave it at that. For other people, though, that confusion can become a kind of splinter, like a deep suffering. You know, we can't just let go of that question. It's like it's very deeply rooted in us somewhere. And so we're on a mission, essentially, you know, like within our life. We want to know. We're seekers, you know, we are seekers of the truth about what's going on here. What are we? Not only that, but a different way of framing the same kind of experience is maybe you haven't really had that question as part of you since you were young, but you've been through the ringer in life. You've done all the things. You followed the rules, you played the games. You got to a certain point, and maybe all of a sudden you see it's just unfulfilling, or maybe it didn't work out the way you were told it was going to work out, or whatever. And then later in life you have come to this, well, what the hell is it all about? This question, like, what's the point in it all? So, if that's the case, if within your heart and mind and your experience of life, this kind of turmoil has arisen, this questioning, this maybe doubting, I don't know, you could frame it however you wanted to frame it. Essentially what we're doing is the answer to that problem. It is what you can do if you find yourself in that position where you are wanting to begin to inquire into what the hell is going on here. What is this all about? What is this life? So the lifestyle that we cultivate is one where that inquiry is at the heart of our day. And since this life that we have is at the core of our problem, okay, maybe there are certain elements of life, the world, society, people, maybe we look at the world and think the world doesn't make sense. But if we bring that back to a deeper, more intimate place, we start to recognize that actually the problem is within us. The question is within us. The issue is within us. And it's a question of identity. It's a question of what are we? What is this life? And so, okay, if our question brings us to, let's just call it ourself for now. The lifestyle is designed to bring what we think ourself to be very much into focus. And the lifestyle then also helps us to cultivate a sustained focus. And from that focus, which is one with insight, it is the very same thing as insight, to look into what is happening environmentally, immediately, what is happening within the body, what is happening within the psychology, what is happening presently within the current manifestation of the energy of experience right now. So in other words, to look into the now very deeply. So the lifestyle that we cultivate facilitates that. Now somebody might say, well, can't I just do that anywhere? Yes, you absolutely can. But you can do it anywhere. But what if you want to explore a realm or a level or a dimension of your experience that is not psychological? What if you want to cultivate the kind of focus that can deeply peer into the body all day long without being pulled around by 100,000 concepts before lunch? Some environments will not facilitate that. Some environments require you to be hyper-psychologically involved, hyper-intellectually involved. Because, you need to think all the time in these environments. You need to be a mental gymnast. You need to be a mental strategist. You have given your life, your body, your energy, your mind over to a particular environment which requires you to act in a certain way. Okay, so you will struggle to look very deeply into presence, deep presence, which is, there's a lot of space in deep presence. There's a lot of psychological space in deep presence. There's a lot of psychological quietness in deep presence. And so some lifestyles do not facilitate certain elements of exploration of consciousness, exploration of one's own consciousness. So this lifestyle that we live is designed to totally facilitate and support one's own inquiry into what one is. That's it. That's the lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Now the specifics of the lifestyle, as in the practical, the specific practical elements of the lifestyle are kind of irrelevant to the conversation, but that's what at least for now, but that's what the lifestyle is for. Mm-hmm. So that's it, yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yep. So if we're moving away from stress and if people want to move away from stress in their life and they want to create this space and time for relaxation, how do they go about doing that while they're still kind of involved with the world? Maybe they have mortgages, jobs, family, kids, friends. The list doesn't end. So how do they find relaxation in their daily life in that world?
Yeah, all right. So let's take this as an example. Imagine a totally still pond. So, out in the middle of a forest somewhere, there's a pond, crystal clear water, totally still. And excessive activity, mental and physical activity, and interaction with the world can very much be like it's raining. Constant raindrops hitting the surface of the pond, creating, call it stress, yeah? Disturbances on the still surface of the pond. What was still is now disturbed. So let's just say that one's own consciousness, one's own sense of self, one's own sense of identity, one's beliefs, one's ideas about life, one's views, whatever, one's memory, one's knowledge, whatever, that's all the rain on the surface. That's not really what you are. There is an earth present and a body of water present, which is completely clear and clean and natural. But on the surface of the pond, there is all of this activity. And that's what you've been involved in your entire life. That's your wants, your ideas, your thoughts, your opinions, your name, your date of birth. Everything you think you are is on the surface of the pond. That whole identity, which is conditioned actually by the clouds. You didn't choose for that. It's just raining. It's just raining.
Mm.
So the clouds are actually also responsible for that. But that's a bit of a side point. You're not really responsible for that either. Anyway, if life has become stressful for you, if this seemingly never-ending torrent of disturbance on the surface of the pond of your life is stressful for you, there is a way to cultivate a settling down of the disturbance. It's what meditation is for. It's what the lifestyle of meditation is for. It's what the lifestyle of cultivation is for. It's what the whole journey of spiritual seeking is about. It's why over the years, over the centuries, over the millennia even, people have shown up and imparted suggestion, instruction, a teaching, so to speak, to help the people of the time to achieve that aim, to achieve that goal. Now, it's not for everyone, obviously. Some people don't care. Some people aren't interested. That's fine. But for the people who want to potentially inquire into a way to get the disturbance to settle down because it's become uncomfortable or stressful, or perhaps somewhere in that torrent is just the simple idea or the simple question of what the hell is this all about? Why is life this way? What is it? What's happening here? I forgot where I was going with that. What was the question?
Well, how do people who have mortgages...
Okay, so that's right. So that's if your life has gotten to that point of torrential disturbance, then to learn how to settle that down, first of all, to learn why that's going on, why is your life manifesting that way? What is the cause of all of this disturbance? Why is that happening? Take a step back from it and learn to observe it in a more detached way, which is what meditation will help you to do. Creates a little bit of a distance between you and the chaos. As that distance is inquired into and established and inquired into, it actually has an effect on the disturbance. Things start to settle down and you start to get a clearer picture, one that you couldn't get while you were so caught up in the disturbance. Because through the lifestyle of cultivation and meditation, you're taking a step back, and that has an effect on your life. Things start to settle down. There are many things that you will see there. One of the things that you will see is that your attention, the operation of your own mind, which is generating what people call karma, which is just what happens, like the outcome of your life, cause and effect. You are the master of that karma. The processes of your own life at a very deep level are the cause of your karma. The way that you're operating in your total consciousness is the cause of karma. So what you see is that as you step back from the chaos and the disturbance, you see that there's like a tug of war. Like the disturbance, the more you play into it, the more you feed it, the more it sustains the disturbance. But the more you let go and kind of relinquish the disturbance, the more it settles down. And it's almost as if you move further and further away from the disturbance. More and more of a space opens up within you, a space of awareness, which is more expansive than what you were experiencing earlier when you thought you were confined to all of the chaos, when you lived in the disturbance. I've forgotten the question again.
How do people who have mortgages...
So to begin to cultivate this, begin to cultivate this space. It doesn't mean that you have to give everything up and run away and go to live in a monastery or leave and go to India and run away from everyone. It's not necessary. But what is necessary is that this space of attention and focus, awareness, begins to open up in your life so that you can see more clearly what is going on. as you begin to see more clearly what you are doing, because it's down to you at the end of the day, it's your own, the operation of your own mind, body, energy, intellect, the operation of your own consciousness, which is determining how the stress materializes in your life, whether it materializes at an excessive level, or whether the stress materializes at a minimal level. That's you. That's on you at the end of the day. Now, that can be hard to detect. You might not know that. You might not be able to see how you are the one who is doing this. But as this awareness opens up, you begin to identify more your own authority, your own power, and your own influence over your own life. So you become more self-mastered. You step into the shoes of the master of the self, as opposed to a slave to the happenings of the self. So yeah, begin to cultivate more space, which is what the spiritual path is all about. That's the short answer.
So you start to identify.
Well, I mean, sorry, that's the long answer. But the short answer is begin to cultivate more space in your life.
And that helps you identify where the stresses in your life are and how you can let them go.
Right, you're trying to build a house, the house keeps falling down, or you're trying to live in the house and you don't know why, but you wake up in the morning, the windows have been smashed. You don't know why. So what do? You set up CCTV cameras. What do? They watch. All day long they watch. And so when you wake up the next day and the window's smashed, you can go and review the CCTV, the watcher, the part of you that watches. And it'll show you, yeah, the noisy neighbour kids are coming down the road and throwing rocks at your house. Okay, so now you've got a problem. Now you've got to address the kids. But until you had identified the problem, you wouldn't even know where to begin. So now you know it's the kids, you can come up with a plan. Get a guard dog, whatever. All right, your house is falling apart. Don't set up CCTV. You go out and start inspecting your property more efficiently. Get a magnifying glass and walk around every single inch of your house looking for cracks or whatever.
Yeah, like what's going on here?
Right, get out the level. You know the level? What a level is with the bubble. Yeah. Set it up on the side and this wall's actually slightly tilted, so it's going to have an impact on that wall, which is going to impact the roof. That's why it's cracking. That's why the windows are breaking. So, but the core of that is you become more attentive. Start paying attention. Tune in more deeply. And from that insight, that's a practice. Think of the term insight as looking into with focus. You want to have insight into this cup? Look into it. Hold it. Bring it to your attention. Be with it. Be present with it. Okay? So that's cultivating cup insight. But you want to know about your life and suffering and stress. So apply your attention, your focus to the stress and the suffering of your life. And doing that will, one, teach you an infinite amount of things about the nature of suffering and the nature of your life. And two, that very experience of becoming aware of what's going on initiates a transformation, a process of transformation. It's called the observer effect. If you're not aware of it, it can't change. You have to become aware of it first. You have to be able to observe it first. And if you observe it very closely, a transformation happens in the experience. It's called the observer effect. Yeah. Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
It does. Yeah.
So do you want to round out what I just said? Like, what was the answer to the question?
If you place your awareness on your life and on yourself, and you start to identify where in your life you are having, where stress is, where anxiety is, where worry is, then you can begin to change those things and work on those things. But without the awareness of those things and how they're there and why they're there, there's no possible way that you can...
Well, it's not that there's no possible way, but you'll be dependent on somebody else pointing it out for you.
Right, okay.
If you can't identify it yourself, you have a teacher, you go to a guide or, a spiritual authority in your life and you ask them, what's going on? My life's turning to shit and I don't know what's going on and I don't know why. And they'll begin to apply their attention and focus to you in order to help the situation, identify the problem.
Right.
However, identifying the problem is only the first step.
Yeah, there's a whole process.
To cultivate the solution to the problem also. Identify the problem, identify the cause of the problem, identify a solution to the problem, and then live in a way that solves the problem. That, by the way, is the Buddha's Four Noble Truths with regards to the nature of suffering. The Buddha identified that there is suffering. Okay, there is this thing called suffering as a being. Stress, also translated as stress. There is a cause to that stress. There is an end to that stress, and there is a way to bring about, to cultivate the ending of stress. And so whatever the stress in your life is, whatever the suffering is, whether it's a small problem like an immediate anxiety or fear or just a kind of worldly problem, all right. But the Four Noble Truths still apply. There's a cause to the problem, etc., etc. There's a way to end the problem. And there's at the same time, though, if the problem is very deep, if it's a life problem, like the problem of suffering itself, the dilemma of being, there is also a cause to the dilemma, an end to the dilemma, a way to cultivate the end of the stress part of it. So, we very quickly identify in this way of life that it is possible to live as a stress generator, a generator of stress. At the same time, though, it is equally possible to live as a stress relinquisher, a relinquisher of stress. But to be able to relinquish stress fully effectively, one must know what causes it to come into being. What causes stress to come into being? And then, because you can identify what causes it, by logic you can deduce how to let it go, how to dissolve it. As you experiment with dissolving stress, you gain insight into that. You start to feel a lot better. Many elements of your life heal. And so naturally, the inclination is you want to keep going that way. And if you go all the way with that, that's a way, or rather a description of the way into enlightenment. Very, very, very deep relaxation. A release of the stressor within you, the cause of stress. And the grasping, stressful, controlling element. Some people have called that the contracted energy. That's a very modern term, but it actually can be very useful to help you identify it within you very immediately. Right, it's a very grasping, tight kind of energy that you may be able to identify right now in your body or in your present experience. And if you can, there is a way to apply yourself to this present moment that can actually release the contraction, dissolve the contraction, let it go, abandon it. And so, with regards to the lifestyle, when one can identify that, it becomes very practical, first of all. It's a very here and now thing that you do. How are you governing your attention right now in your experience? Are you breathing? Are you relaxing? Are you relinquishing control? Or are you grasping very substantially at the present moment? Are you able to sit on a cushion with your eyes closed and relax and relinquish and let go and maintain this very deep clarity and stillness? And then all of a sudden when somebody comes to you, there's an inversion of that experience and you become very fearful or aggressive or attacking. Okay, so that's one way to cultivate the release. When you close your eyes and sit on a cushion, you become very peaceful, but then when you encounter the world, you're very stressed and stressful. All right, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to simultaneously cultivate the silent, still, calm openness of kind of very present meditation, but also learn to interact with the world in a way that continues the detachment, that releases the world from your grip, and so in reflection releases you from the grip of the world. And that would be a kind of path somebody could learn to approach each moment in that way, where what they are face to face with, they are relinquishing and releasing the grasping and gripping element of it, not trying to control, not fearful of what's happening, not anxious about what's happening. Instead, more of a surrendering or acceptance of what is happening, continuing to facilitate the gap between oneself and what is happening, in which there is a sustained relinquishment and relaxation, whereby that so-called contracted energy is constantly relinquished and released. All right. Okay, so that's another way to do it. Those who want to cultivate a very powerful and direct version of that will, to the best of their ability, minimize their engagement with the stress of society. Those are the kind of people you find at a monastery or an ashram, essentially a spiritual community. Everybody wants to operate on the same page as minimal source of stress, minimal interaction with stress, and so more of a continual and more powerful and more dominant relinquishment of stress.
Right. Okay.
All right. So that's essentially define a way to discern between different people operating on different levels of inquiry with different capacities, with different desires for the path of cultivation, which, just incidentally and a little bit of a side note, is why one person can hear this information and fully resonate, totally 100% resonates. Another person can find it very difficult to approach and have a bit of conflict with some of these ideas because they're operating at different, people might say different frequencies, but we don't really want to go down the language of that. But they're just at different places. So there are people who want to touch upon meditation for a little bit when sitting on a cushion. And then there are people who want to live in the world of total meditation. And so although there's common ground between them, there's also a lot of differences in how they approach life and the way that they govern their mind and their interactions, their relationships, their desires, etc., etc. Okay.
So, when a stress arises for you, how do you approach that stress?
The same way with everything, I choose whether or not to get involved with it. When you ask that question right then, I made a choice to respond to you. That's a form of stress. You have just imposed a form of stress on me, okay? Very, very minor, of course. But I have the total ability to just ignore you. Not in an ego way, but more of a sense of when there is awareness of the body and the totality of experience, that is an opening. My whole, I'll just describe it this way for now, but my whole personal experience of my life immediately opens up, almost like if you could imagine a flower opening to the sunlight, you know? You know how it's been like this?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so cold, but then the sunlight hits it and it just blossoms. It's like a never-ending opening. That's what happens on my own. And then you throw a question into that and it bounces off one of the petals and there's a little contraction if I respond to it, to give you a response. So first of all, the first thing that happens is a choice is made as to whether or not to engage with you. And this was a very nice example. It's a question about stress and suffering, and so the response is designed to help facilitate an opening over here too. A lifestyle that's going to also be nicer for you to experience. So it's done out of love. I want to help you, and so I respond. But a lot of the time, there are all sorts going on. People bring all sorts of things to you that are just irrelevant. You don't have to respond to them. To respond to them would be an experience of stress for you anyway. And it's not facilitating an opening in that person's life. It's not facilitating a reduction of stress. Actually, what's happening is that person who is consumed by stress is also trying to impart that stress upon you. And there is no establishment of relationship or teacher-student element in that. It's just a bombardment of stress. You don't have to respond to those things. And so, to answer the question maybe more simply, a choice is made whether or not to respond to the source of the stress. And if there is a response, there is a very considerate and careful interaction established. An interaction that is established in presence, so that the relaxation element is brought to the response. The relaxation element is embedded in the response, so that whatever is going on over here can be also encouraged to relax. And that manifests in all sorts of different ways. Somebody might come who is hungry, who is in need of food, and there would be a relaxed response of providing food, sustenance to that person. But there can be all kinds of stressful encounters, stressful experiences that appear in your life. The world is a great source of stress, potentially. And so part of what we do is endeavor to learn how to approach the world with a very relaxed, unstressful, as best of our ability, unstressful energy and approach. All right, so where do you want to go from here?
Well, potentially it's important to go into the opposite of stress and relaxation.
Okay.
And why it's important to, like, for instance, I'm sitting here right now and I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm trying to relax. I'm consciously, like, coming back to my breath.
To properly relax, you have to let go of everything.
Yeah, so
you have to let go of everything.
Why do we need to let go of the trying to relax?
Okay. Well, sit here right now and just watch the body. Pay attention to the body. So wherever you are right now, if you can, just drop what you're doing and stop and tune into the body. Can you identify tension in the body somewhere? Keep watching it. Identify the tension in the body and then keep watching it. And let that bit of the body relax, wherever that is. And now, continue to sit with that part of the body and ensure that it is relaxed. Don't try to relax it, just relax it, that part of the body. If it doesn't relax straight away, or it relaxes and then comes tight again, stay with it. Stay with it and continue to gently relax that part of the body.
In a physical sense or in a, like...
Talking about the body, the physical body. The physical body. Tune in to the physical body. That means right now, notice the feeling in the body of tension, where it might be. It'll be located somewhere in the body. When you identify tension in the body, relax that part of the body. Stay with it. That means keep your attention on that part of the body and relax it. Stay with it until it relaxes fully. Now you might have to sit with that part of the body for 30 seconds or a minute. But eventually, if you apply yourself in that way, that part of the body will relax. You'll probably notice then that there's tension somewhere else in the body, and so you'll move to that part of the body and relax that part of the body too. Now what you will find from that practice is that there is no such thing as a place where you are fully relaxed. Because you deepen the relaxation of the body, the tension that you identify in the body, you keep relaxing it and then it deepens. And then you become aware of tension on a deeper level, and so you relax that level of tension. And then when you've relaxed that level of tension, you'll become aware of an even deeper level of tension in the system, in the body. We're just still talking about the body here, then you relax that. What will simultaneously become apparent to you in that space is that there is a kind of tension in the thinking too. And that actually the tension of the body is related, it's almost an extension of the tightness, the stress in the thinking. So then, once the body has become very deeply relaxed, now you'll start to relax your attention on the thinking. Thinking will come into, a thought will appear, and instead of grasping at it, which results as tightness and stress, you will relinquish the thought, and there will be an opening and a relaxing of mind itself. Okay, with sustained effort in that domain, you will relinquish, over the course of a bit of time, you will relinquish your entire sense of self and everything that contains. All of the memories of a single lifetime, all of the beliefs, all of the views, all of the identity and ideas that has gathered in the brain, which you have believed to be you, will be relinquished. And as that is relinquished, there is a powerful energy that is awoken behind the body and behind the thought process. And that's what happens to deep meditators. That powerful energy has the capacity to totally transform your experience of life. And that is why a way into relaxation, which is a way away from stress. It is a way to go away from stress, to go in the opposite direction of stress, which some mystics, monks, enlightened beings have laid down as a path for people to use to govern their life with, to help them facilitate a always deepening relaxation and always relinquishing of stress, so that this energy of pure mind, which is pure consciousness, very, very, very deep into the heart of consciousness itself, that energy can be awoken in your life, which sees and experiences life more as a totality, as opposed to an apparently individual separate being, which the idea of an individual separate being is sustained with the interaction of what we just described, the unceasing thought process which generates tension and stress in the body. So as you relax the body, and then as you relax the brain, the psychology, and then as the mind relaxes, the whole apparently separate individual self-identity is released. Totally released. Totally dissolved is another way that it's described. Gone. Completely gone. Also described as a flame of a candle just puff going out. Also called enlightenment or nibbana, cessation, the ending of stress. So that is the way, or a way, deep into relaxation, leading to greater and greater enlightenment, otherwise known as unending awakening, unceasing awakening, to abandon the stress of being. There is a really lovely quote by a monk called Ajahn Chah of the Theravada Buddhist tradition. And this quote I used to read in one of the monasteries I lived at for a while. And it says, it's a quote by the master, the teacher, to the monks, his disciples, essentially his apprentices or his students, his serious students. And it says on the quote, don't become a monk. Now he's saying that to monks. Don't become a monk. But these people are already monks. So what does that mean?
Yeah.
How do you interpret it? Do you have anywhere? From what we've just been speaking about, don't become a monk.
Well, don't identify as a monk.
Why?
Because then you're grasping at something.
Right. So The becoming is the identity, the internal process of becoming. In the psychology, becoming something is an identity which inevitably leads to stress, inevitably leads to identification with one who suffers, one who was born and will die, one who is subject to the round of birth and death, it is also called. And so if there is no sense of becoming anything, there is no identity with anything. Instead, there is only the totality of life. And the way that life operates in that totality is fresh, brand new, instantly. Life self-operating. It's always relinquishing. It's always releasing. It is forever enlightening, forever awakening from the dream of what it is currently. It believes itself to be for a fraction of a millisecond, and then that dream is dissolved. It could be called the gift of forgetfulness, the blessing of forgetfulness, to just let go. I can't remember why we got onto that, but just feel free to go wherever you want to go with it.
Makes me feel better about my forgetfulness.
Right.
Okay. So,
can it be sustained? Can it be sustained? Can the relinquishment, the forgetfulness, the letting go, the abandoning, the releasing, can it be sustained? If the relinquishing of presence can be sustained, there can be established a permanent acknowledgement of impermanence. Forever relinquishing. Some monks have ultra-refined this to the watching of the in-breath and the out-breath. If one watches the in-breath and the out-breath directly, without a gap of attention, there is nowhere for anyone to grab hold. Any one being, any identity. If one's focus is so powerfully concentrated into the breath, where one sees all of the varying fluctuations of the breath, and all of the energy that is in that and surrounds that, all of the energy of life itself, which is intimate with the breath. If one is in that place, there is no, and one can sustain it, and there is no gap. No gap of attention, no gap of focus. Because there is no gap, there is nowhere for an identity to live. It lives in the gap. That's why the identity is called a bubble. It's just a little bubble that forms in the gap. If the gap is closed, the bubble pops. That identity is poof, gone. But people live in the gap. The gap gets wider and wider and wider because they've lost focus. And so the sense of self-identity comes into being. And now people fall into the sense of identity and they live in the gap. A whole lifetime in the gap. The gap. It's a brand, for God's sake. So to relinquish that means shorten the gap. That's meditation. That's what meditation is for. Shorten the gap until there is only a hair's breadth between your palms. And when you are there, double down, triple down, quadruple down on your efforts. And that is the lifestyle of a very, very serious cultivator. And if that gap can be closed, that hair's breadth of a gap can be it can't actually close anymore, but it kind of self-implodes and just obliterates itself. Enlightenment is realized at that moment. That is called the moment of enlightenment. So obviously, somebody who wants to cultivate a deep awakening would know this, or at least would want to know this, and would want to turn their life towards this kind of lifestyle. Unfortunately, the modern world has no interest, for the most part, in people's enlightenment. In fact, you can't even talk to most people about this stuff because it's so far beyond their insight into what life is that you sound insane to those people. And so that's fine, but it's a difficulty for people who are serious cultivators, which is why Mystic Society exists. Because this is an unfolding, emerging community of people who want to close the gap. Personally, and then to share that in the collective, immediate relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so, once again, a natural materialization of a way for people is manifesting. And it's manifesting all over the place because a lot of people are inquiring now. But a great deal of the world is still in a different... they still have a very wide gap.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's just what it is. Now what?
So, closing the gap is like letting go of all the identity, and
It's deeper than that.
what?
What you do, the closing a gap will let go of the identity. But in order to close the gap, you don't focus on letting go of the identity. That's like saying, you don't... if you want to... So we live in Australia, and they do burn-offs every so often throughout the year. That means they kind of set fire to a part of the forest in order to burn all of the gathered shrubs and leaves and twigs and stuff. So let's just say that to let go of the identity is after the burn. It's all burned. It's all done. Actually, to start the process, all you have to do is light the fire at a certain few little points. That's all you need to focus on. Focusing on lighting the fire in a certain way. It's a big forest, so you're not just going to light it in one spot. You're going to light it in several spots around the perimeter. And then that fire is going to do the work. As long as you have sustained the flame, initiated the flame correctly, and you're watching in the right way, the flame will be sustained in the right way. It will burn like an inferno, a raging inferno, and then it will die out. It will burn itself out. That is the lifestyle. So you have various ways to cultivate this kind of focus. You don't even have to worry about the identity. You don't even have to do a thing about it. You just light the fire in the correct way. Establish the discipline, the lifestyle, the focus, what to focus on, and how to focus correctly, and the whole process is initiated by itself. If you initiate the process, it is sustained by itself, and the outcome is self-materializing, but one can say that along the way there may be rain. You have established this fire. Be prepared for the world and your life to kind of rain on the fire and try to dampen it and put it out. And so at times you'll have to double down on your focus, withstand the pressure, keep operating in the same way. And let's say at the very end, the final moment of the extinguishing, well, without going too much into the conceptual side of it all, let's just say that there's a part of you that lives at the center that really might struggle at the final step. It's called the cliff edge. You get to the cliff edge. A lot of people, fear comes up. Too much fear, too much self-grasping comes up. It's like it reaches a peak. And if you don't burn that part of it, or if that part doesn't burn and then dissolve, eventually all of the weeds come back. And so there is a requirement to be very committed, determined, to see it all the way through. Without going too much into the description of exactly what happens there, it's not really relevant. At least not at the moment. You can receive encouragement to keep pushing. Don't turn back. Stay focused. Stay present.
Well, I was just having a think about this gap and the closing of the gap and bringing the focus to here and now and being, I guess, the witness of nothing is ever the same as it was before. It's always changing, it's always moving unendingly. Uh, and so, how could you possibly identify anything in that anyway? It's never been before, it's completely new.
We call this the way of no mind. Dao Wushin, the way of no mind. One can operate in a way in which no mind is established. One could interpret that as no ego is established or no self is established. In the same way that when one is directly watching the breath with such a powerful focus that one is really seeing all of the slight fluctuations of the breath, the very slight fluctuations of the breath, without deviation, when the whole of one's experience is seen exactly the same, via exactly the same light, actually seen in the exact same light, one is operating within the enlightened mind of life. That is how life experiences itself, without grasping, because it is so attentive to itself that there is no gap left for a self to come into being, for a self-identity, an apparent self-identity in life. That can't come into being. Now, a lot of people have this can potentially explain why some people have this perception of there is no enlightenment. If you operate in a way whereby you believe a self to exist because there's such a gap, and you have a self in that, as you get to grips with reality and that gap diminishes and that self dissolves, it is seen that actually the whole process of suffering and enlightenment and awakening was contained inside that bit that was illusory. It was only in the gap. The descent into suffering and the path out of suffering is in the gap. Once the gap is completely annihilated, it is as if there was never a being to suffer. There is no identity anymore. And it is seen that there never was an identity. However, it is established as a way for those who are in the gap, stuck in the gap.
Right, okay.
So this term, the way of no mind, is exactly, if you come back to what you said, can you witness your life presently with total attention? In which you'll probably find there's not really much to be said. In that space, tension is identified. If one sustains one's attention with that tension, it will relax. It just does.
Because you see it for what it is.
Right. And when you see tension for what it is, it dissolves. It relaxes. One might even realize it's like this when you see it, but then you'll watch it, totally attentive to the stress, and there will be a natural relinquishing of that. And that process will deepen and deepen and deepen and deepen ad infinitum, going to infinity. And so a cultivator will intend to establish their life there. And what it does to the person is it makes the person very present and very practical. For the most part, I'm not here in that way. I'm not, when I say that, I mean I have nothing to do. I have no stress. But then something comes up which needs immediate attention, and the problem is addressed, and then it's relinquished. And so it's a very short-term relationship with stress. And it's very wonderful, and it's full of life, it's full of energy. And one can walk and be in nature in total presence. And even nature relaxes with you. Everything, because it's one, in that place, everything relaxes together. And that is the shared mind of enlightenment, which is obviously the objective or the goal.
For some.
For some. For those who are cultivators, yeah.
And so in our daily lifestyle, the cultivation lifestyle, our stresses are very much focused around our basic essential needs.
The needs of the body.
The needs of the body.
The needs of the community.
Yeah. And so that comes up within a day. We deal with that and we keep the rest of the stress of the world at bay. We don't engage.
It's not that we keep it at bay. It's that it doesn't exist to us. The way that our mind, so not intellect, but intellect, emotion, body, attention, energy, mind, the whole totality of life, awareness included, that which is within awareness, the whole experience of life. The way that operates does not grasp at stress. It relinquishes it. And because it relinquishes it, it only deals with the stress that is very apparent. And we don't have 99% of the stress that a lot of people do have in our life because of the way we operate. 99% of the stress that a human being experiences in the modern world only exists because there is a grasping at stress. Stress arises, there is a grasping at stress which produces more stress and new kinds of stress. If that initial stress is not grasped at but is instead relinquished, those 99% other stresses do not materialize. They don't manifest. It's like saying, in a way, a domino effect. The first domino effect comes. One person punches you in the head, and you get angry, so you punch the next person in the head. They get angry, so they punch the next person in the head. Well, the effect is after a week, 17,000 people are at war with each other. Okay, that was the after effect. And now they're making weapons and guns and bombs. And okay, well, that was the after effect. From the first stress that arrived, somebody punched you in the head. What if you didn't respond? It didn't have a knock-on effect. It didn't have a knock-on effect. There was no after effect, and people aren't at war at each other now. Because you brought an end to the conflict by not responding. So now there is no sense of conflict or war in your environment because you didn't respond. So if you don't respond, does war exist? Nobody's at war in our community. So those stresses aren't here. They don't exist to our consciousness because we're not operating in the same way that a lot of people are. And so if more and more people can begin to establish this way of no mind, this way of no ego response, and no response to ego, 99% of the world's stress would dissolve. And the last 1% that's left would be very immediate needs of the body, needs of the community. Yeah, taking care of the pain of the body, or the hunger of the body, the immediate needs, the housing, the shelter, the medicine, the illness, addressing the illness, relinquishing, diminishing illness of the system. And the rest of one's life is experienced in a total openness with life as it is happening in the moment.
Right. And sometimes say, for instance, with this punching metaphor you brought up, so you don't get to punch another person in the head, which means you don't get what you want. You don't get the revenge that you wanted to make someone else feel pain, because you don't respond to you being punched in the head.
You
didn't
don't
respond.
grasp. Yeah. Exactly what you said.
And maybe because of that, you don't get what you want. But to recognize that that doesn't actually matter.
And it's actually not really what you want.
Mm.
It's like there's an immediate emotional reaction which wants something, but behind that is a much deeper desire to be free.
Yeah.
And so you don't get what you want in that way. The quick revenge, and that's the perfect word, there is no revenge in reality. Revenge is something worth looking into. But you actually get what you really want, which is to be free of that. Conflict, stress, war.
Mm-hmm. So for people living very much in society, jobs, mortgages, families, all of these stresses, as a way of perhaps them being able to bring about some lifestyle changes, it's important to recognize like that your basic needs need to be covered. Wake up in a day and deal with your basic needs. But your wants, leave them at the door.
As much as possible.
As much as let them go.
Excessive want, yeah. Excessive want for material things or material experiences. The kind of want which pulls you away from where you are, away from presence, away from peace, the core peace in the experience of being present. To learn how to live in that peace, as that peace, and allow that to govern your wants and the way you interact with the world is the way. And part of the reason it's very difficult for people is because people have been so individualized. We have been educated to take our own wants into account, become successful for ourselves, and then establish our own family in a little bubble, which isolates us from the rest of the world. And we become these little bubbles of little families operating in a brick box called a house, next to another family that's operating in a little brick box, next to another family. And we think that is community. Whereas actually, if there was a recognition that, okay, let's just say 10 families in the neighborhood all want to begin to cultivate this essential lifestyle, the lifestyle of the essence of life, those people could connect and potentially find a way to live in harmony together and share all of the resources so that they don't need to operate as individual units, but instead can learn how to operate as a collective within that framework of cultivation, which is what Mystic Society is doing. When I say that, as in, yes, that is what Mystic Society, the Mystic Society is doing. They are cultivating this connection, inquiring into it, establishing it, sustaining it, and introducing it as an option of a way of life for people, whereby this current modern economy is no longer working for us. And we don't really have a problem with the fact that it's no longer working for us and we want to do it differently. So people could begin to get together in that way, and thereby there would be less pressure and stress on each individual to make their own life work in accordance with desire, the way of the world, the ways of the world. And instead there is a coming together of the consciousness, the people, who begin to live in a harmonious way whereby the space is cultivated, the peace is cultivated, inquired into and established, the space is established, and the awakening happens. The awakening to everything we have been speaking about here, the ending of stress, the diminishing of stress, and instead the cultivation and the establishment of worldwide relaxation. Or rather, maybe let's just say community-wide relaxation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you want to know how to do this? Reach out. Make a connection. You can try to do it on your own. Great, try to do it on your own. You'll be much better off, though, in the long run, finding people who can help share the burden of existence, people near you. Collectively, we turn towards relaxation and we slowly diminish the source of stress in our lives, and we help each other to do that. And at the same time, if you want to really begin to explore these ideas in a more long-term format, feel free to reach out. I have noticed that recently some of the videos we've been putting out have been getting a lot of attention, and some people seem to be wanting to kind of talk and raise ideas and concepts and topics. It's going to be absolutely impossible for us to communicate with everybody individually via text messages in the comments. We have too much going on. We've got too much to do in our own life. And there are too many nuances with regards to communication via verbal language in order for us to have effective communication via messages. It's just not going to work for us. Thank you, though, for all the comments. We do appreciate the comments and we read all the comments. And feel free to put forth whatever you want to. But if you really do genuinely desire to engage in a kind of discussion around some of these principles, you will have to reach out if that's the way you want to go. We will have to talk to you directly because we just can't do it via messages. But thank you to everyone who's been kind of contributing, in any way. I recognize a great difficulty with some of this stuff. Some people do have a great difficulty, and I am very personally prepared to explore that difficulty with you if you want to explore it. If you have questions and you would like to ask them and inquire into them, and we can do that together and potentially break through some doubts or some insecurities or some problems that you may have. So it's an option for anyone. We just will not be able to do that through comments because it's just not how it's done. So yeah, sorry to just throw that in there, but that's something that I thought might be relevant to some of the people who are commenting and trying to engage with us. Yeah, we'll have to do this the deep way if you want to do it, which is either face-to-face or via sort of conference call. We could do a group call, a group Zoom call, that sort of thing. So is there anywhere else you want to go with this diminishing of stress or this inquiry into stress? Is there anything else you think it would be important to clear up or to address?
Well, just one thing. I was having a conversation earlier about someone who's new to has a little bit of experience with meditation and is setting aside the time within their day to do a little bit of relaxation, a little bit of meditation. And there's the stress of the world continuously crawls back in and doesn't really allow for the relaxation to occur. So
when you say the stress of the world crawls back in, does it crawl in from the environment or does it crawl in from the psychology? As in, if you're sitting here trying to relax and you've left your phone on and people are calling you or people are coming over to your place and knocking on your door, that could be interpreted as the stress of the world crawling into your experience of relaxation. But it could also be you're sitting with your eyes closed or you're laying down and you're trying to do relaxation, but your own brain is trying to pull you back to activity, engagement.
I think both. I think there's a very much an environmental stress for this person, and there's very much a psychological stress because of that environmental stress. Like perhaps a project someone is working on, they're stressed about this, a responsibility. There's a real life material pressure. So, when there are things that you should be doing, your brain wants you to be doing those things, but you also have the intention to sit down and relax.
Right.
How does someone overcome that barrier?
Balance, for one thing. If somebody is has regularly inquired into stress in their life in the way of maintained stress, very much regularly involved with the world and people and things and projects and objects, and they are conditioned stressfully, then they will require perseverance in the sense of relaxation methods. To consciously learn to relax, that will require perseverance and consistency and determination to cultivate that skill. So they will have to regularly inquire into that practically, the same way you have to eat multiple times a day, or at least once a day to sustain your life. You have to eat relaxation cultivation regularly, consume it, practice it in order to establish it deeply in your life and to receive the fruits of that practice, to benefit from it deeply. At the same time, that's very practical. Also, while you're doing that, switch off your phone. If you live in a community, put a little Buddha statue outside of your van or wherever you are, and then if people are about to come over and knock on your door but they see the Buddha statue, they won't knock on, they'll leave you alone. So you're telling people you're not to come over. Establish the physical boundaries of relaxation by telling people don't come over at this time, or do it at the same time every day and let everybody know what time. So that's another element of it. Also, though, with the real stress of life, are you generating more stress than you need? You have a responsibility. Can you align with that responsibility in a very, very unstressful way, in a very, very relaxed way? Is it possible to face the responsibility head on, to apply a certain amount of time each day? Do you need to be thinking about it 24 hours a day? Or could you rather cultivate 2 hours a day where you are hyper vigilant and focused on this stress? It's a real problem. Shit needs to be done. Let's get it done, but you've got 2 hours to do it. And then outside of that, would 2 hours do? Does it need 3 hours? Whatever. Do it. Apply it. And then outside of that 3-hour framework, learn to develop greater discipline over your psychology. Don't go bringing the stress in again. Don't go feeding it. Just like training a dog. A trained dog, well-trained dog, knows when it's time to run. Because master says, actually, he throws the stick. She throws the stick. Dog runs fast as possible. Get the stick. Bring it back. Yeah, we do that for 20 minutes. It's called exercise. But outside of that, if the dog is constantly pestering you, make me run, let me run, it's pestering you, the dog is the boss. So your brain is pestering you, make me run, I want to run. Okay, well, it's not trained. It's not a very well-conditioned brain. It's not a very well-disciplined brain. One must instead up the game of discipline, step into the shoes of master. Give your dog 3 hours, your brain, 3 hours. To focus on this stress, and outside of that, don't throw the ball for it once when it's asking you to throw the ball or the stick. Establish the discipline. If every time the brain runs to you and pesters you with the stick, it's like a desire, let's go and look at that stress, deal with the stress. Well, when are you going to stop that? When are you going to put the brakes on? Your brain doesn't know how to. It's like a dog. You have to step in. It will respond and be trained by the way that you don't respond to it. And so what that will do is, for the person, cultivate 3 hours a day where they get all their shit done. And then outside of that, they learn to relax. They do other things, and they absolutely do not pick up that stress, that one, whatever that is. Now, after a little while of doing that, because it will be very uncomfortable at first, because your brain is not used to operating that way, but after maybe a month of operating like that, your brain will learn something. Your dog will learn something. It'll all of a sudden realize that, oh, so for 3 hours a day, I get shit done. I get to run. I get my exercise. I get to throw the ball back and forth. And outside of that, I can relax. And I still get the job done. Now, that realization, the reason that's important or powerful is when your brain realizes that it doesn't have to think 24 hours a day about this problem, and that it can just think for 2 hours or 3 hours, and that the problem still gets resolved that way, it will want to relax outside of it. The reason it's thinking 24 hours a day is because you are responding to all the anxiety. The brain thinks, I need to think about this all day long, otherwise it's not going to get done, or what's going to happen if it doesn't get done. But if you tell it, show it, 3 hours is plenty. In fact, 2 hours is better. And outside of that, there are 15 other things you can do that help cultivate relaxation instead of stress. And after a month, that realization will hit home and you'll realize you've been stressed unnecessarily for a very long time. And what that will do for you in terms of awakening relaxation in your life, you can't even begin to imagine right now what that will do for you. So, that's a very long way and a very, hopefully, overall explanation of saying, pick up a little bit more discipline with your brain and be determined, because if you've lived a life of stress, you are conditioned to experience stress, so it will take some time to reprogram the behavior of the body, the brain, the consciousness. But persevere, seek support as well from people around you if they can offer you help, and potentially you can share the stress. If you have a real stress and you need help with it, consider sharing it, because other people might be able to help you. They might be able to take over some of the responsibility if that's appropriate, or they might be able to share the burden and release the pressure from you. This is part of collective growth and evolution. Anything else on that specifically that you think might want to drill into?
Not right now.
I would say when you sit down and you're trying to do this relaxation stuff and you've given yourself a 20-minute time limit and you're wondering, you get 10 minutes in and then your brain starts agitating and freaking out, sit with the agitation, sit with the freaking out, continue relaxing. If it gets too much and it becomes too turbulent, open your eyes, stand up, walk around. Don't engage with the stress though, but just move, get up, move the body, rotate the shoulders, rub the hands, take a few deep breaths, whatever, rotate the neck. Then sit back down again for the rest of the 20 minutes. So if there's still 6 minutes to go, re-establish it. So you're responding a little bit to the agitation, but not all the way, and then you're bringing it back. Okay, you've still got 6 minutes left. Great. And you'll find that will help without over-explaining it. That will help. And if you want to know why, go and do it and find out. And just persevere. Stick with it. This stuff, some of it takes a long, 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 long time.
Yes. Very
long time. I could tell you a joke about how long it takes.
Go on.
But we'll be here for a very long time. Do you remember the one about the mysterious sound? Remember that one?
No.
I'll tell it to you one day. We'll do a separate video on it because it'll be very annoying. But it's really funny. Yeah.
Yeah, monk jokes are a little different. They're a little harder.
All right, so are we done? Are we is that all we needed to address?
Yeah, I think that's it for today. I guess again, thank you everyone for all the lovely comments and the engagement. Please feel free to reach out directly. We really do want to start having conversations with people. I think that's it for today. That's all I really wanted to say.
Well, it can be really helpful when you want to incorporate this kind of energy into your life, to reach out and establish connection and relationship and regularity. We put one of these videos out every week for people to watch, and that's wonderful. But we're doing this as a collective, and there are also other people I talk to as more kind of like, let's say, official students. Regularly through the week, we have regular face-to-face encounters, whether it's through video or it's in person. And for those people, they are able to assimilate and integrate this energy and this lifestyle more because they are connected to it more. They experience it more. So it's really for the more serious people who would like to establish more of a connection. Or just work together on some projects. There are real things we can do to help each other cultivate a life together which has less stress, which has more relaxation and more freedom, and to explore those potential unfolding realities, let's say, for each person. we would need to consider that and approach it in the moment without dictatorship, but more of an exploration. So anyway, that's an option. This, that's part of what we do as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
We share the relaxation and we share the stress in order to help the stress, which we all share, relax. And then we get to all experience the relaxation of that together.
And because we're all working on the stress together, it
Gets addressed more quickly.
Yeah. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching.
Goodbye for now.